Well, once again, greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and here's something else I missed during my dealing with a massive natural disaster. Uh, George Lucas has sold the rights to the Star Wars franchise to Disney. And of course, South Park did. Actually, I heard this first on South Park. When South Park did the episode, I'm like, we got power back. I was watching just in time to catch the new South Park. We're talking about this. I'm like, I know how South Park sometimes is with this. Are they being? Did it actually happen? I had to go and check, and lo and behold, it turned out yes. And not only that, Disney has already announced they're in the process of making Episode 7 now. How do I feel about this? I'm a big Star Wars fan. As I look over, I've got the original series, the prequels there. I've got Clone Wars, the ones that were done in Samurai Jack style, not the CG one, which I haven't watched. But I've got the two Clone Wars they did, which I'm somewhat disappointed they didn't continue on with that style of directing with that. But I think that kind of goes and shows why I'm a little bit um, happy with this move. I think George Lucas, his creative juices have been used up, and he is not the type of director to be put in complete control of something. He's got bad tendencies, and he doesn't allow anyone to check. I also think the one producer, what's his face, um, Rick McCullum, that was his name. I think he is too much of an enabler for Lucas. He kind of does. He's one of those. I think he's kind of one of those producers that think the audience is extremely dumb, and I think he did a lot to encourage Lucas to do a lot of the really bad and stupid stuff from the original, not the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy. And yeah, I don't. I think that was Lucas's always problem. His first movie was great. He had a lot of creative juices in his younger years. He was also somewhat kept in check. When he did the first, A New Hope, he was a new producer. He was almost certain that the movie would be a bomb. So he was trying to be, how should I put it, keeping some of his tendencies in check because he felt that after this he was going to have to then resell himself to the studios because he had done American Graffiti. That got good. He was going to try his little big budget. If he was lucky, it would just make its money back, and it'd be a not negative, not positive on his career, and he would just then try to get something else. So I think that kept him to try to keep as much of his own personal stuff in check. I think it was also he was a great director for the 70s. This stuff was all new, hadn't been tried before, all that stuff. And then of course episodes 5 and 6. Well, he didn't direct those two. He had another director there, and I think that helped keep him in check. That there was somebody else that would push back and go, no, George, I don't think that's a good idea. By the time of the prequels, you could see that there was absolutely no check on, and there was nobody in his executive staff of ILM or Lucasfilm or any of the other companies he owns. There was nothing to tell him, George, I don't think this is a good idea. I think the script here needs reworking. I don't think these lines are well. I don't think having stuff like, George, you have an actor in the middle of this green all over the place. We have a massive budget. I think we can afford a set, and it's going to bring out better acting. Which I think was a real problem with the trilogies, was George Lucas did so much green screening and unnecessary CGI that it did hurt performances. And it's amazing also if you look at it. Episode 3 was made for under $100 million. Part of that is because the normal CGI budget was smaller because George Lucas outright owned the special effects company. So they did it for at cost, i.e. they basically just did it for whatever computers they had to purchase to do the software, which I think they mostly already owned, and just pay the staff for time spent, and they would write that off because whatever profits the film generated would be the profits for the company. So it kind of goes to show actually. It's a little sidetrack there. It goes to show kind of what you can accomplish, or how much films are jacked up because of their CGI budgets and because of the profits generated by companies like ILM, Wingnet in New Zealand. But that's a side note. But I think you could kind of see why a lot of fans, even on the internet, have kind of like went, we can't even call Disney for selling out, because George Lucas was kind of already gone that way. He was kind of just doing crap for crap's sake. He was poorly writing. He was poorly managing his own property. And considering that Marvel, and therefore the Avengers, was kind of produced by Disney, goes to show that Disney might be actually a better place. It can get directors and writers who hopefully will be fans of Star Wars and therefore have some love and respect for the genre, but yet have really good stories to tell. And I think that was the problem. George Lucas did not have the stories to tell. Now he is apparently somewhat still involved as a creative consultant on the episodes, and maybe he would be good. I think he's really fine for giving the general outline of what the plot should be. So he can write up his general 5-page outline of what the plot should be, maybe a few concepts he has for maybe vehicles or something like that, or a new race, or okay, here's a particular character I want. But then there'll be an actual writer to either hopefully bounce back against really, really stupid ideals, or you can take a general stupid ideal, but if you write it well enough, it doesn't bother the audience. And if you have a good enough director as well, he can also counter. He can also turn he can turn lead into gold. Hopefully, also the directors they hire will be much more anti. I think after Star Wars, a lot of other directors outside of Lucas, who I don't think is very introspective on himself. He does not analyze his own flaws, which is why after episodes 1 and 2, you figured by the third one he'd start improving. He'd start adding maybe some more live action elements. It didn't seem to really happen. I think a lot of other directors, especially younger ones, you see, are much more active in pushing back against the CGI. It's actually the older directors who are getting engulfed in the CGI and not recognizing the flaws and the problems with seeing that happen. Like, it's distracting to the audience because the audience recognizes that CGI and cheap, where if you can do live action and maybe just a little bit of CGI, they might not notice the CGI parts. Nolan, perfect example of that. When Nolan uses CGI, a lot of times it's hard to tell. He also is very demanding of how realistic it's going to look. So I'm hopeful that when they get a director and he's not going to do stuff like what I consider the dumbest move from the trilogies, from the prequel trilogy, is the Clone Troopers were completely CGI when there was absolutely no need. It was probably actually more expensive. You couldn't make the Clone Trooper suits because that would be like doing the original trilogy and having the Stormtroopers be CGI, because it's literally basically the same getup. It's just a guy wearing a plastic suit, which is supposed to look like a plastic suit because it's supposed to be a futuristic armor that would probably be some sort of plastic-like material. So no one ever it's one of the times where you can actually use cheap plastic suits and for armor and stuff, and people buy it, especially now. Nowadays the Stormtrooper outfits look even more like how you'd see real troops, and you can buy this plastic-like material. We have plastics that are incredibly tough and almost bulletproof. You can buy that in the future. People would be even more, or even in, I guess, it's technically a long, long time ago, the galaxy far, far away. So I guess in this more highly technological society, they'd have something even better. But no, Lucas doesn't want to spend. I think it's not even that expensive to make Stormtrooper outfits. You can buy them. There's plenty of fans that have their own Stormtroopers suits. I don't think they're that expensive. Maybe a couple $100. and you're not spending a couple for a five, for a quick scene of a stormtrooper just walking down, or a clone trooper walking down a hallway. It's not $500 to make that scene. That's a couple $1,000 for a quick, like 10-second scene of just a stormtrooper walking down a hallway. Now, when he did it with the droids, I could buy, because you wanted a shape that would be something you couldn't put in a human. I could kind of buy a little bit with the droids doing CGI, because you obviously couldn't do them as humans if you wanted to make them truly look robotic. I can respect that, and I didn't mind that in the first film. But man, that still the one thing I could never stand with the prequels was the fact that the clone troopers were all CGI. Now, like I said, I don't mind if it's like you have a scene. One of the things I will normally always give a pass on is, okay, I want a scene where there's thousands and thousands of people on screen at once. Okay, you can do your CGI people then, but not for the rest of the stuff. Not when there's only not when there's only two troopers sitting in the background. Because here's the other problem with the CGI is they're always moving. Especially ILM, I think. Well, this is, I think, more than is ILM. I think animators and doing CGI in general is they move their characters too much to the point where it's distracting. And you can actually, I noticed this in Revenge of the Sith. They've got these two guys who are actually in suits that are supposed to be like I forget what the one race is called, Neimoidians, the people that are basically the Trade Federation, the race that makes up the Trade Federation. There's a couple of their guys that are there as like their warriors, and they're in suits, and they're like guarding the door in the background. And I noticed them; they're just kind of sitting there. Occasionally, you'll notice like a slight move as they're just standing, like a little bit of sway in their body. But for the most part, they're just still standing. Everybody else who's supposed to, like, every droid is non-stop moving. When you figure the robots would be the most, calculated, they would only move when they absolutely have to. And same thing with every character that's CGI. He's constantly moving. He's constantly fiddling with something on his chest or something. His breathing can't just be subtle breathing. It's got to be, we have to show you that he's breathing in order for you to buy. No, it's too much movement. So that's another advantage of having actual suits, is actually the lack of movement, which is much more realistic. People are not constantly fiddling around. You can occasionally do that if you want to have a particular character where that's their tick, that they're very fiddly and they're constantly moving about, messing with things. That's alright for if it's supposed to be a character trait, but not if it's just because animators can't keep still. That's one of the advantages why they keep on sticking actors now in suits and having that performance done in not suits, but in, well, a suit, the golf ball suits, the mocap suits, because in reality the actors know that there's this thing called subtlety, and sometimes you don't move. But I'm getting distracted here because we're going into problems with the trilogy, although that's kind of tied into why I think this is a good purchase for Disney, because you're getting new people in who are not going to do these mistakes. Or I hope they won't be doing these mistakes. However, I think Star Wars is, while saying all that, I think a lot of people are going to compare it to, well, Disney picked up Marvel, and that hasn't seemed to mess up Marvel too much. There's an important distinction between this, and I think there's an important distinction in two ways that are kind of semi-related. When Disney purchased Marvel, it didn't purchase just the rights to the characters. It didn't purchase the characters. It bought the company. It bought a company that's going to work for it. Disney is a massive holding company. It owns a lot of other little companies. And so Disney basically purchased Marvel for Marvel. Marvel still exists as a company. It runs itself as an independent branch, as basically an independent company that has literally a parent, someone that's overseeing it, and who sends its profits up that way. But Marvel is still operating and running its own things. It's not like Marvel purchased Lucasfilms. Or not Marvel purchased Lucasfilm, but Disney purchased Lucasfilms, or Disney purchased ILM. No. Disney purchased just the rights for $4 billion, or 4 Instagrams. That's never going to get old. Well, until people forget about Instagram, because it's like most things Facebook acquires, it doesn't actually do anything with it. But I digress. Um, it purchased literally the property rights. So I have a feeling Disney, unlike Marvel, who it lets continue to do its own things, basically receives all the profits from that. And if it needs cross promotion, okay, we need more. Marvel still has its own film section. Disney, just because it's making a movie under a Disney overall umbrella doesn't mean it's going to come out under Disney. Disney owns Miramax, for example. You don't see the Disney logo on front of Kill Bill, although it is technically a movie that's owned by Disney. So for some cross promotion, you see maybe some Spider-Man stuff in now Disney World and such. However, Star Wars, it looks like Disney purchased Star Wars to make it one of the core Disney brands. That's a big difference in how it's going to be treated. It's not going to be like Marvel, where Marvel was a profitable company with profitable IP, and therefore Disney purchased it just so Marvel runs under its umbrella, it receives those profits, but Marvel still operates as Marvel. This is becoming what we're going to see is Disney is going to make Star Wars its own. And it kind of in ways, you've already kind of seen a little bit what they mean by that is, when Marvel was purchased by Disney, you didn't see immediately Marvel stuff popping up all over Disney. In fact, I think they've been rather. I was actually somewhat disappointed. I was expecting more from shows and stuff being done by Disney. Maybe it's still in the pipeline. Or I really don't watch Disney at all, considering I'm an adult. So I don't know. Maybe there are a couple of TV shows out there for Marvel, for different characters in the Avengers, but hell, I haven't even seen like some Disney. I haven't even. I'm sure they're produced, but I haven't even seen like comic shops like any Mickey Mouse stuff under like Mickey Mouse comics under the Marvel logo. Or even like crossovers. I was expecting at least like the people with Deadpool would try to like make some more references or like be able to pull purpose, like, okay, just because we're owned by the parent company, let's just throw in like random character cameos because we can now get away with it. You didn't even see that. Like they really were kept as an independent. This, not so much. You saw almost immediately. I saw posted up on Intensity that within a couple days of this deal going down, Disney had through R2D2 and C3PO into one of their shows. I have no idea what it's called. But the important part is the show that they immediately threw it in as cameos for their shows. And I think that kind of shows what they would. Almost as if if Disney was doing this with another show and they were whatever the plot line. I saw like 2 minutes of the scene just to see, okay, what exactly are they doing with it? And well, at least they were live action. But it's like, oh, we want to go see Skywalker Ranch, so they click on the door. They knock on the front gate, and of course R2D2 and C3PO come and meet them. It'd be like, oh, we should go to where they make the Disney studios, and they click on it, and Minnie Mouse would come out. It would be the same joke. So to me, that's kind of signaling what Disney intends to do. We tend to make this one of our core brands. You're going to see Star Wars and the word Disney become very intertwined. Not only are we'll probably see an additional TV series. I would not be surprised if Disney. Well, they'll probably continue with the Clone Wars. I have a feeling once Episode 7 gets released, there's going to be a TV series that goes with it. Either following a side character, probably now not live action, but I would imagine an animated series that's going to take place in the same time period. Hopefully, we'll see some. I was about to say better video games, but let's face it, the Knights of the Old Republic probably is really. That's up there with one of the best RPGs of all time, so it's hard to get better. But maybe at least Battlefront will come back. Who's with me on that one? But I imagine we're gonna see a lot more media with Star Wars in it. I think we're gonna see a lot more crossover with other Disney properties with Star Wars. Unlike Marvel, seeing that crossover between like Mickey Mouse and Spider-Man, didn't really see it. I foresee in some sort of media them throwing a crossover with Mickey Mouse and a Jedi at some point much faster because they're treating it like a core property. They're treating it like it's one of their Snow Whites. You probably will see on the Disney Princess brand Princess Leia up there. I guarantee you she's now going to become one of the Disney princesses in a steel bikini. But have high hopes. I have high hopes for this. I think they're going to actually run this better. Um, Disney can make good stuff. I think they're very good at. They're very protective of their core brands, which might be a problem if Star Wars is treated as a core brand, because then you get really crappy stuff. But I have a feeling they purchased. The reason they purchased Star Wars was to make the bigger live action movies, not animated stuff. So I think for that reason, it will get treated hopefully a little bit better than some of the crappy Little Mermaid reduxes, straight to DVD movies that are probably horrible. But I am hoping, actually, I should also bring this up. We were talking about video games a second ago. I now really want to see a new Kingdom Hearts game. Now that you could probably then have both Marvel characters in there and Star Wars, that would be a crazy one to do now. They really need to make a Kingdom Hearts 3 just so they could have like Deadpool teaming up with Mickey Mouse and your third party member is Darth Vader. Come on. Who's with me on that one? Um, Speaking of Star Wars episode, they have announced the writer, which is always key. Oh, there it is. 20. Let's see. Our writers: George Lucas characters, Michael Arnett. Arnett. Yeah. Is the writer. He is most known for. Let's see if I look at his filmography here. He wrote Toy Story 3, Little Miss Sunshine. He's writing the Hunger Games, Catching Fire. That'll be the first one. That's his real first movie that's going to have action in it. I wouldn't judge too much from the Little Miss Sunshine thing. For writers, that's how they get their start. I can't write a movie that's going to have cost $1 million. So, but it was a fun movie. It was well received. It's gonna get. He can write. He's a guy that knows characters. I think Toy Story 3 for a lot of people are gonna be like, this guy can pull out emotional heartstrings, which is a good thing. That's something Lucas really couldn't do too well. I think Michael Arnett he's also written about the story elements of Star. He's actually like written essays on why Star Wars like works, why the original series it worked, and it has to do a lot to do with in his essay, which I didn't read the entirety of the essay. I read like most of it, but what he argues is it's the reason the original episode, A New Hope works so well is that basically all the plots get resolved in this one couple of seconds. Luke learns the Force. He defeats the Empire. Han comes and saves him. All that stuff happens within a few seconds of screen time, and it has such an emotional release for the audience that we feel really, really good about it. So I'd imagine he's going to try to do that again with Episode 7. But the big thing to watch for is the writing, not directing. It's hard for people to separate those two. Basically, if something is looking bad because of special effects, just not being very complete or done well, or special effects, or the angles it's shot at, or lighting, or any of the cinematography stuff, or even bad performances sometimes, you have to it takes a little bit more of an eye to notice the difference between when the writer had an okay script, but the director just messed it up. Sometimes it's we get the opposite. Director was doing a great job, but the script was just horrible. So it's going to be worth watching Hunger Games: Catching Fire, because that's his first. That's probably also why Disney was comfortable enough in investing him. The fact that he picked up the Hunger Games is like, okay, this guy's getting he's got a name behind him. He's also written a little movie called Oblivion, which is due out next year. Let's see here. Court Martial sends a veteran soldier to a distant. Oh, so he's doing some sci-fi here. So he's getting some sci-fi under his belt, where he has to destroy the remains of an alien race. Actually, this sounds rather interesting. Oh, it's got Tom Cruise and Morgan Freeman in it. Oh, this is the first I've heard of it. This sounds like a really good movie. I'll have to watch that one too. But he looks like a good writer. Who's going to direct it? I don't know. Spielberg would have been my first guess because he was always supposed to direct Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. However, because of Lucas's fighting with the was it the Academy or the Guild? I forget which one. They weren't letting him do it, so he had to drop. I was kind of hoping Spielberg would pick it up and like do it, but I guess not. He has kind of said he's not going to do it. IGN's been like, everyone's been asking every director. I have a feeling it's going to be not a well-known director that's going to do it. I think it actually would be best served if they give this to an up-and-comer. Someone who's a legit Star Wars fan, but someone who's made really good movies. Like they even asked Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Tarantino would not be a good person to direct Star Wars. Not that he's a bad director, it's just his style is not favorable to Star Wars. But there's certainly plenty of good directors out there. I hope they give it. Some people have said Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon, he's been around for a while, but as a major, he's only really have 2 movies under his belt. I wouldn't mind Joss Whedon doing it, but I'm not sure if he's going to. He would become the ultimate nerd then, wouldn't he? But yeah, there's plenty of directors. Probably someone who is going to be, if you're looking at who Disney will probably get, I think Michael Arnett, whatever his name is a good indication. They're going to get someone who is fresh, is coming through. This is my prediction at least. Is getting some legitimacy. He's gotten at least. You're going to see someone who's done at least one decent sized project before, and who's probably in the process of doing another big project. Someone who's got he's very up and coming, someone who we believe has got a really good career ahead of them, and that this is going to be one of the things that really jumpstart it. I think that's who they're looking for. They're looking to get new up and comers to kind of take over because it's not coming out till 2015. So we've got 2012 is almost over, but you basically got a little over 2 years before we're going to see this. But I would imagine within the next couple months they're going to have to announce the director, just because it's always best to have a writer and director know who they're writing for. It's good to have the writer know who they're going to be writing for, and for the director to also, in the early processes, give some feedback to the writer. It's like, I don't know how I would shoot that scene. Can we rework it a little bit? Or even you said this scene's in the Arctic. How I was going to shoot the movie this way, I think it would really contrast unless there's some sort of reason for us to have a contrasting scene in the Arctic. Maybe we can move this scene to a different environment. Small stuff like that, but it really helps to have that talk between the two to get feedback, especially also for the writer. More so for the benefit of the writing. Because of course the writer's always going to be on hand to say, well, this is what this scene was supposed to be, a dark scene, yada yada. He's always able to feed back to the writer what he was intending, but it's always good for the writer to get feedback from the director ahead of time to know where there might be a problem with the script, or is like that scene, that sounds great when you writing it, but if I try to get an actress to say that during this action scene, it's too long-winded. We need to shorten it up a bit because they're going to be running and all this stuff whilst you're speaking. Stuff like that. And I'm kind of rambling on at this point. I think we've talked about enough. I think this is a good thing. I think you can't say that, this is a sellout now, because I think a lot of people have said George Lucas is sold out. So, it's been done. I'm happy. Now it's more of a sit back and see. This could also mess up. I'm not going to say it's not. I'm not going to say Disney won't butcher it. but I think it's in a better position now. Because one of the things I'd always ask was, George Lucas is getting up there. I wonder who's going to take over the Star Wars franchise when he either retires or passes away. That answer has now been answered. I was thinking he was either going to try to set up one of his children as being like an inheritor of the franchise. In this case, it looks like he's just decided, I'm going to become a even bigger billionaire. Take $4 billion cash upright. Booyah. Yeah, for $4 billion, I'd probably sell stuff. I, I would sell some intellectual property for $4 billion. Well, signing off for now, guys.